Today we'll be learning about combining sine and cosine functions. So the goal for today's lesson is to combine a sum of sine and cosine functions into one sine function. Let's start with a review of the sum formula for the sine function. 3 times sine theta plus pi over 6 is equal to 3 sine theta cosine pi over 6 plus 3 cosine theta sine pi over 6. This is just using the sum formula. If we rearrange the terms and then calculate cosine pi over 6 and sine pi over 6, we can see that we get 3 root 3 over 2 sine theta plus 3 over 2 cosine theta. Now, if I call this A and call this B, then we have the form A sine theta plus B cosine theta, which is this right here. So we can see that 3 root 3 over 2 sine theta plus 3 over 2 cosine theta can be combined into one sine function. So in general, using the sum formula, we can express r sine theta plus alpha as r sine theta cosine alpha plus r cosine theta sine alpha. If we rearrange the terms, we get r cosine alpha sine theta plus r sine alpha cosine theta. Now, if we call r cosine alpha A and r sine alpha B, then we have the form A sine theta plus B cosine theta. And we can see we can write that as r sine theta plus alpha. In other words, we can combine these two trigonometric functions into one trigonometric function. So let's try out an example. So let's try combining 2 sine theta plus 2 square root of 3 cosine theta. Now let 2 equal r cosine alpha and 2 times the square root of 3 equal r sine alpha. Now we want to solve for r and alpha. Now consider the right triangle with the hypotenuse of r and an acute angle of alpha. Now we see that the length of this side is equal to r cosine alpha, and the length of this side is equal to r sine alpha. But we know that r cosine alpha is 2 and r sine alpha is 2 times the square root of 3. Therefore, we can now use the Pythagorean theorem to find the value of r. So we now see that r equals the square root of 2 squared plus 2 root 3 squared, which is the square root of 16, which equals 4. And because r equals 4, from these equations, we can see that cosine alpha is equal to 1/2, and sine alpha is equal to the square root of 3 over 2. Thus, one value for alpha would be pi over 3. So now we can write the original expression as follows. Replace 2 with 4 cosine pi over 3, and replace 2 root 3 with 4 sine pi over 3. Now if we factor out the 4 and we rearrange the sine and cosine, we have This is just the sum formula for a sine function. Saita, cosmos, cosmos, saita, right? So we can combine it into one sine function. And now we're finished. So today's point is, if we are given A sine theta plus B cosine theta, we can combine it into one trigonometric function like this. And the r here is calculated like this, the square root of a squared plus b squared. And we can find the angle alpha using these equations, where cosine alpha is equal to a divided by r, and sine alpha is equal to b divided by r. So now we can use this formula to solve this equation. Now this equation, we cannot solve it just like this. We don't know how to do it. So first we have to combine the sine x and cosine x into one sine function. So in this problem, we can see that a equals 1 and b equals negative square root of 3. And r is equal to the square root of a squared plus b squared, which equals 2. And cosine alpha equals a over r, 1 over 2. Sine alpha equals b over r, minus root 3 over 2. And so we can solve this to see that one value of alpha is 5 pi over 3. Now that we know r and alpha, we can combine the left-hand side into one trigonometric function, 2 times sine of x plus 5 pi over 3 equals 1. And we divide both sides by 2, and we get this equation. Now this is much easier to solve. Let's use the unit circle. So we're looking for an angle x such that x plus 5 pi over 3 is equal to 1/2. So we start at 5 pi over 3, and x goes from 0 to 2 pi. So that means we start here, x equals 0, that's here, and we add x up to 2 pi. That means we do one full revolution, right? So when does the sine equal 1/2? Well, it's here and here. So how far did we travel from here to here? This one is x is pi over 2. And how far do we travel from here to here? This one is 7 pi over 6. And that's our answer.